See that everyone's logging in right now. We appreciate you being here. It's 9:01. We're going to get started here shortly. We see everyone's sounds are, getting linked up. So as you're joining us, please go ahead. We always have these prompts to go ahead, rename yourself and drop your name in the introductions in the chat so we know where you're from and who's along for the ride today, November 16th. So just some tips on how to do so. If we look at this slide here, it's going to give you some prompts on how to make these changes. And basically you go down to participants and you will go to rename and then just either put your institution, your school after your name. I believe mine has that demonstrated, as well as a lot of the people from the ESC and state support team. So something to model. We appreciate that. All right. So we're moving along. We have a jam-packed day. We appreciate everyone being here. So our first check-in, we know that the break is upon us, and we have some schools that may be taking an extended break for Thanksgiving. We're wondering, what are you most excited about during this time? A, is it just being able to catch up on some sleep, maybe a little bit of a break? B, is it, hanging out with family and friends? C, are we looking at football? Maybe not Cleveland football right now, but something to be excited about. D, are you traveling anywhere? Are you going anywhere with anyone? Or E, probably my favorite, the food part. Go ahead, drop it in the chat. We'd like just some interaction with you all this morning. And extra points if you can tell me what show that E's on right there. Kathy, B and E. Okay, there we go. Brian, all right. Food. Got the yams. We have some mashed potatoes. I think that dish has a steak on it, so that's gonna be pretty good. All of it. I love it. Awesome. Yeah, just throw it in the chat. Family, awesome. Family coming into town, awesome. The Packers, yeah, Packers and Lions. They usually have the traditional game on Thanksgiving, so awesome. Well, thank you for your participation on that. Just something to get everyone smiling this morning. So today's presentation, if you click on the link, or if you scan the QR code, will provide you that information for today. Has all the slides in the presentation format.
Right, so as a former shooting has been told part of my time at the AD that they cannot use.
Oh, do we have a question? That's right. Hot mic. We get it. It happens sometimes. Additionally, after the coaching sessions, we have a follow-up with you all. I will send out an email that will come from my account, and basically it will indicate, hey, these are the notes. Here are some links from last session. In October, we talked about Tier 2 systems, which was a nice prelude to this week. Linda Blanche and Stephanie Denham did a great PD regarding Tier 2 systems, talking about readiness for your teams in your buildings. And basically that was, we gave you an hour brief that we had Parma on, talking about, their Tier 2 systems, which was great. So you'll get all this information. My goal is to get it out tomorrow at some point, but depending on the videos and whatnot, it might be till Monday. So be on the lookout for that. Again, here is our regional team consisting of our ESC consultants and our SS team support. So a lot of us come with different backgrounds, whether it's early childhood or school age, administrative, school psychs. So variety of expertise within here. And we have some special guests today to help out. Relooking at the purpose of the coaching network. We're going to talk about discussing and sharing best practices to receive some technical assistance, also to maximize and to sustain PBIS with fidelity in your buildings. And with this collaborative approach, the goal is to get everyone on the same page and see what works best for your building and your clientele. So today is going to be a little bit different. We don't have a district spotlight, but we have a special guest, Megan Kangaraj, for the ESC. She is a wellness consultant, and we're going to talk about mental health integration. We're going to have we kind of flip this around a little bit, is that we're going to do the presentation from Megan. We're going to get into our discussion groups. We have a very large group today. So we have you in 4 different breakout groups, have you talk about some guided questions, get you back out to share out. We'll talk about culturally responsive, and then we'll hit you with the updates and then get you out of here. So it should be a pretty fast hour as we move forward. All right. So without further ado, Megan, you're up, and welcome. Thank you so much for doing this.
Can you guys hear me okay? I am Megan Kangaraj from the ESC. I'm a student wellness consultant, and I am going to give you the very, very shortest, briefest overview of what to think about if we want to consider, mental health integration into our PBIS system. So to start off here, I just want to share, historically, PBIS and school-based mental health systems have really operated separately. We often see kind of a disorganization delivery of mental health services, and there's a lot of times a missing communication loop in PBIS tiers 2 and 3, as well as minimal or no mental health community agency involvement at tier 1. So that's what we want to think about today, is how do we really integrate our mental health partners, our, therapists that are in our buildings day in and day out, into our PBIS system. If we can join together and create this integration, we're really trying to increase the likelihood of having quality, effective programming at all 3 tiers. I have just a quick little overview video for you. Brian, it's on the next slide, and if you can share your computer sound.
I think I have that set, so give me a thumbs up if you can hear it.
It has never been more clear that we need a new response to meet the mental health needs of our youth. The social, emotional, behavioral needs of students has never been more prevalent in our country, and the need continues to grow. Suicide has gone from the 4th leading cause of death to the 2nd leading cause of death among youth and young adults. 1 in 6 youth experience a mental health disorder, and only about 50% of those youth receive treatment. Lack of student access to treatment leaves schools as informal mental health providers, which is okay because school mental health research says youth are more likely to complete treatment when offered in school settings. The increasing need of our youth and communities makes it time to break down silos of service delivery and focus on a whole population response. Schools have been using a prevention-focused tiered logic known as PBIS to organize and allocate resources to support behavioral needs of students for decades. And school-based mental health has grown during this time period as well, while powerful and more effective to have supports within the schools. Often, school teams and community partners still work in isolation, not knowing the supports the others provide. The Interconnected Systems Framework draws on the strengths of both systems to create one single system of delivery, while also focusing on increasing the confidence and competence of all school staff to rigorously and continuously support the mental health of all youth. Before we provide enhancements to the current systems, we first need to celebrate the progress that has been made. Through the advancements of both school mental health and PBIS, we are at a tipping point where mental health and wellness for all students, staff, families, and communities is a top priority. There is awareness and even support and policy for increasing mental health clinicians within schools. SEL is being prioritized and taught like academics to all students by all staff. There is increasing awareness of childhood trauma and understanding of the impact on learning. While these are huge celebrations, there is still work to be done. Now we need to move our focus to designing our systems to integrate these successes in the most efficient and effective ways. First, we must alter our systems so that we utilize the social, emotional, and behavioral expertise of school and community clinicians on teams.
Direction or something
We are selecting evidence-based practices together that align with the need of the community, the resources available, and the capacity to implement. Then define one continuum of supports matched to the needs of their students, families, and staff. And use data to drive how students enter and exit interventions, helping move away from a traditional referral handoff approach. Integrated universal teams can focus on prevention by using data to expand and prioritize the social, emotional, behavioral competencies being taught to all youth, and align the skills within systems such as our school-wide matrices to create consistency. Then integrated teams create procedures and structures for routinely monitoring all practices that are put into place to ensure the end result impacts student outcomes. We also must invest in the time, space, and coaching for teachers to embed social, emotional, and behavioral teaching.
We're going to stop there, Brian.
It has never been more.
Awesome. Thank you. So just a brief rationale overview of, why would we want to integrate mental health, in our PBIS framework? Why do we have it in our schools? I hope you got that out of the video. And I started with here, I do this often, what mental health integration is not, right? So oftentimes we're buying extracurricular materials. We are doing some one-day PD days for culturally responsive training, for trauma-sensitive training, for staff, and it's kind of like a one and done. These are some examples of how we have responded to an identified need for more mental health support. So a lot of us realize, yes, we need more supports, and this might be something we do to respond. These aren't bad things to do, right? But without actually focusing on redesigning our system, these things are just never going to be enough. If you take anything away from this slide, let it be that people are not supports. So getting more funding to bring more people in isn't going to automatically create a more effective system. We're concerned more so about that system of care that we create and about those evidence-based practices and interventions that those people then are providing to our students. So if you want to move to the next slide, if we're doing it right, and if we're shifting our focus on mental health integration to this integrated model, some of these things on the screen are going to be the outcomes that we see, right? So we might be able to identify students with mental health needs earlier so we can get them the support they need sooner, right? We are going to have a clear link between what is an identified need and what supports do we have that actually match that need, right? So we have this cognizant effort of matching what we have to student needs. And then we have a data system to monitor progress in those interventions. We are using our clinicians well at all tiers. And really at the end of doing all of this, we really hope to see, that we've created this healthier school environment. So the multi-tiered system of support is that framework where we want to integrate mental health. Mental health also has their own model or framework, if you will. So on the next slide, you'll see that they really center around 4 interconnected pillars of practice. So they're, just like PBIS, concerned with using a strengths-based approach, having SEL at the heart of what they do, being trauma-informed, being centered around equity, right? All of these things are happening within our multi-tiered system of support. And if we build a school culture and climate where students thrive, we're doing all of these things in this integrated way, so they're working together. So we want to really avoid this work in silos that we've historically done. and bring everything together so that we don't have these like competing models happening at the same time. The integrated model emphasizes all of these things, but really at the forefront, just like with PBIS, is relationship building and having some clear, consistent communication. So what could that look like in a tiered model? On the next slide, we see a triangle that maybe some of you have seen before. Just like in PBIS, we have that tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 level, right? So in schools, we are offering different supports at different tiers based on how we've identified students with consistent criteria. So we're supporting students in academics at different tiers, right? We're supporting social emotional growth and well-being at different tiers. We're supporting PBIS and behavioral supports at different tiers. And mental health and the mental health system works in a very similar way. So you see on the next slide, clinicians typically work from their own continuum of care. So they have a system of tiered supports as well, based on identified needs, much like our PBIS tiered framework functions. So sometimes tier 1 for this population, you might hear referred to as those who are thriving, right? So in PBIS, those are our kids, functioning pretty well with just those universal supports that we offer. Tier 2 for the mental health world might be those who are surviving, right? Tier 3 might be those who are struggling. And they even extend to a tier 4, which would be those in crisis. And oftentimes those with that level of intense needs have some wraparound services involved, have some community resources, support maybe even beyond the school setting, with the families at home in outpatient settings. So why haven't we strategically aligned these systems to work together, and where can we begin? So a few things to consider. We're going to lead you through some guiding questions in the breakouts in just 1 minute here, but I just want to give you a head start on, where do we start if we're not doing this? Do we have clinicians who can join our PBIS team? Do we have mental health providers in our buildings every day, multiple times a week, that can kind of help provide some input to those multi-tiered system of support teams? Do we have tier 1, 2, and 3 teams working to provide support to some, all, and few? And can our mental health clinician also offer their level of expertise at each of those tiers? Can they make recommendations at different tiers? Can they do some positive check-in phone calls with students? Can they teach some suicide prevention curricula in classrooms? Can they assist in prevention programming at the universal level? Can they help us interpret our screening results, right? Like, where do we go from here if we now have an identified at-risk bucket of students? Can they be that expert that helps our team make some of those decisions? And so really, these little 4 green boxes are what would have to happen if we say that we're integrating mental health and we're doing it well, right? We need to realize it's for everyone. There are things that can happen at the universal level. We have to use that same framework, just like we do in the PBIS model, to kind of create a system, determine what data we're going to use to decide if it's working, evaluate it, and come back to the table and decide if we need to strengthen certain things, eliminate certain things, right? We want to use that same model as we think about how we're going to integrate mental health supports. And we want to have a single system of delivery. So sometimes in buildings, we might have, you can refer to tier 2, or you can refer to a provider, or you can refer to a system navigator, right? Or you can refer to small groups that are run by the counselor. We have all these multiple pathways, and it's really hard for us to determine then what's working and what's working most effectively. And it's also hard to determine how many supports are we providing to students in general, right? What's our capacity? Are we going to overload our supports, or are we working at a capacity level that we can sustain? So we want to have that single system of delivery and one set of teams, because we're all doing similar things, right? It's not enough just to say, oh yeah, we have a mental health provider in our building, right? They come in, they see students, they leave. Who knows what they do? Who knows what the kids are working on, right? Access isn't enough. We really need to look at what are the outcomes we're looking for and how will we know when we've reached those outcomes? Because that will determine our success with mental health integration. So if we move into the breakouts, Brian, Erica, I don't know if you want to give some more instruction on the breakouts. We really just have some guiding questions. It's meant to be a network space to have you guys kind of share where you are right now and think about maybe what you could do next, what you're more interested in adopting.
Thank you, Megan, very much. That was extremely helpful. So of course, we want to keep the conversation going in our breakout rooms. So Brian, if you can go back a couple slides, we're going to kind of explain how our breakout rooms are going to run today because it is different than how we've done them in the past. So you will be going through 2 different cycles, although you won't be switching breakout rooms. So the one set of discussion questions will focus around mental health resources and community partnerships. The other one will focus on mental health integration for tiers 2 and 3. And if you go to the next slide for me, we'll have 4 facilitators in those rooms and each of the different rooms. So in dealing with mental health resources and community partnerships, we'll have Amanda Nowak and Christina Delaney facilitating the discussion in those 2 rooms. And then Megan Canagaraj, who just spoke with you now, and then Mary Wise will be facilitating the discussion around mental health integration for tiers 2 and 3. So the way it's going to work is that Brian has already assigned you to one of the 4 breakout rooms. You'll spend 10 minutes in a discussion with Amanda or Christina, Megan or Mary in one of the topics. Then our facilitators will switch rooms. So you will not have to switch rooms. The facilitators will switch rooms. After 10 minutes, a second facilitator will enter the room and you'll have another 10-minute discussion on the opposite topic. And then at that point, Brian will bring you back to our main room to kind of just do a share out on some thoughts on those discussions. So what are those guiding questions that Megan referenced? You see them there on the slide. I think Brian will be pushing those out as well. Or if not, Megan, Mary, Amanda, and Christina will all reference those there. In addition to those questions, if you have additional questions concerning mental health, please feel free to ask those of our 4 experts that'll be with us today. If you'd like to share a little bit about what's working in your buildings, in your district, please, by all means, feel free to do that as well. So before we send you to breakout rooms, are there any questions about how it's going to work? Brian, if you go to that next slide there. There we go. So that kind of lets us know what our timing is going to look like. Any questions before we send you to breakout rooms? Let me look at the chat quickly to make sure I didn't miss any questions. Brian, if you could help me, I'm trying to see if
we look good for the chat. We know it's going to be a little different for everyone. So just know that you're going to be in your breakout rooms for close to 20 minutes. I'm looking at the time now. We don't want to sacrifice what you're going to talk about in those groups, but we also want to be respectful for the other aspects of the network. So those updates and whatnot. So if we need to cut some time somewhere else, we will, but we want to have these rich conversations continue on in these breakout rooms.
If you have any questions, feel free to come back to the main room and Brian and I will be here to help you get to wherever you need to go. And I think they should be opening soon, correct, Brian? There we go.
All right, yeah, and if you don't have a room, we'll make sure that you jump in one. So go ahead, get into those rooms. We'll see you in a little bit. Well, that was a quick 3 minutes after I broadcast that. I can't take credit for pulling you back on that one. I don't know if they're preset or what. So I do apologize. My Zoom skills need to get better here. But we're back with 15 minutes left. I was popping in and out of the conversations. So it sounded like there was some really good stuff going on. So if we have some brave volunteers from each group, Group A, I know that had a lot of Bay people in it. If that group would be willing to share out to start off, and then we can kind of go through. I do have the roster for everyone, and I don't want to be that guy who calls on people, but again, the network. So let's talk about what was the main takeaway that you had from your group, and hopefully it wasn't my Zooming skills or lack of them.
So good morning, everybody. I think one of the takeaways for us, and it was some follow-up to some of the conversations that we had, and we apologize while talking, but we muted, is some of the roadblocks that we have when it comes to mental health services. and sort of that red tape, the desire to provide those services, but some of the parameters that are put in place by our district to not be able to provide those services, but also recognizing how fortunate we are to be in a position to have a care coordinator, and kind of bridging the family with community with the schools. It's a resource that we are so grateful to have, and the work that they do. For us, we sort of started that bulleted list of listening to what other districts and other individuals were sharing about some things that we might beg, borrow, and steal to try to implement maybe our version of that. So these are very valuable conversations for sure.
Awesome. Yeah, thanks for sharing that out, talking about barriers. I think that's a very important piece of this too, is how do we address those barriers in a professional way, especially when it comes to the mental health integration aspects. Thank you, Beihai, for sharing out. Group 2 or excuse me, Group B, anyone want to share out from that group? We had some CHUH friends, Sugar Falls.
I believe I was on Group B.
Sure.
I think.
Okay.
I don't remember.
That's fine. Go ahead, Maggie.
Anyways, my name's Maggie Brooks. Our group talked about a little bit specifically in regards to my building, discussing how much support we have and the resources we have in terms of mental health, and making sure that that does get integrated with our tier 1, because we have not yet earned bronze. So we don't have a tier 2 team, which I feel like sometimes in tier 2 and tier 3, it's easier to integrate those more specific sources. But taking full advantage of, like, Metro Health comes to our schools, and what resources do they have, and making sure to ask the right questions to the people we know that do have resources to understand what we can and cannot use better.
Thanks, Maggie, for sharing that out. The other groups, I know it gets kind of weird because if you didn't know what group you're in, it's kind of like a miss right now. So anyone want to share out for the greater good, highlight anything that was the main takeaway?
Can I share out really quick? Two things pulled from the group. One, I think the way Twinsburg is approaching their curriculum around SEL is brilliant, and I think that would be a wonderful thing to share. Also, the parent perspective, bringing parents into teams, your PBIS teams. We had Dan share that, he was a little resistant. I think a lot of us are used to being those keepers of information, but 3 years later, it's a success story. So
thanks, Christina, for sharing that out. And Twinsburg, you got a shout out there, so if you want to elaborate on any of that, we would love it. We'd love to hear it. So if not, anyone else?
Hey, Brian. Sorry. So yeah, we had a couple folks on the call from Twinsburg. I'm assistant principal at Samuel Bissell. It's our 2nd and 3rd grade building. Mrs. Johnson is the building principal here at 2nd and 3rd, and Scott Asti is the assistant principal at K1, our K1 building in Twinsburg. So yeah, we do have a really, I guess, unique model. We have a Beachbrook social worker in all of our schools, full-time, so 5 days a week. And so with that, we're able to integrate that particular individual into every level, whether it's tier 1, 2, or 3. And so, when it comes to like access, they're a member of the staff, they're a member of the family, so everyone knows who they are. And because it's in all of our buildings as well, families know, because families who are part of it, they know that whether they're Wilcox, Bissell, or, Dodge, RBC, or the high school, they know that that service is provided and that service is available. And then with regard to the connections to resources outside of the school, that is the person that will typically start to connect families to different resources based on need. So yeah, we're very fortunate to have that resource here in the district, and it allows us to it allows us to run different groups. It allows us to meet with students one-on-one, whatever the needs happen to be, we're able to kind of, really work to, service those needs. So yeah, so we're real lucky here. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Scott, for that. And we see some people in the chat asking about more of that, and hopefully we can get some connections there for that model that you guys are demonstrating at Twinsburg. So thank you.
I do want to just come back to a couple of the questions where people kind of got in a discussion about is the communication loop. When you're talking mental health integration, it definitely is key. And then also we had a couple sharing about how they do have discussion and their providers sit on the tier 2, discussions at least, sometimes it might be pre-team meetings, but it is to look at both not only the academic end, and this is such great news that we're definitely now intentionally looking at both the behavioral and academic instead of just looking at academic, which we've done through our TI for years and, perfected to a degree. And now we need to get that way with behavioral health, though it's not as black and white.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, Mary, that's a good point. And, I know we can always tie in, another aspect, which is attendance to that piece. And we look at mental health and behavior. So I'm sure there's going to be more information to come on that. Anyone else want to share out the good of the group? Otherwise, oh yeah, go ahead.
Okay, I don't really want to share, but I have a question. Something that I have a student in here. Something we were talking about, the behavior specialist and I were talking about yesterday. So we have so many students. Hold on, I need to close my door. We have so many students. I'm in K4, okay? And we have so many students who they're putting on ADHD meds. And, a lot of times like trauma, the side effects of trauma present as, say, ADHD, right? And she and I were talking about how this is just a theory, okay? We feel like the children are developing a lot faster. Like if you look at them physically, they're developing a lot faster, okay? Sooner, I should say. And so a lot of times they don't diagnose children with, mental health disorders, something like that. I don't know the exact language I want to use there. And so she and I are wondering when it says 1 in 6 youth have mental illness, what are they considering youth? Because, we feel as though I'm wrestling with a child right now who's trying to take a wheel, like a prize wheel from me. Anyway, we feel like the mental illness is kind of maybe showing up sooner than it used to. But they're saying you have to wait to diagnose. Does that make sense what I'm saying right now as I'm doing this side job over here?
Yeah.
Okay. Rochelle, we're all in schools. It's okay. I hope that kiddo gets what they want at some point, right? If it's earned.
All she has to do is
that's
class 5 minutes and get 10 goldfish.
That's it. Right? That's it. Earn your tokens. Come on, little kiddo. That stat is from the American Academy of Family Physicians. It's ages 6 to 17.
Okay.
So that's kind of where that comes from if you're curious about context.
Okay.
The CDC has a similar stat that's age 2 to 8. But yeah, it does include younger students. So.
And if I could just speak to the diagnosis.
I was also after you, Amanda.
Okay, so the diagnosis piece there in the world of diagnoses, there's 2 different realms. You could go the DSM-5 route, which is typically you're looking at students 5 and older, but there is an early childhood diagnosis and label. What you need to think about these statistics is these are the folks seeking treatment. So these are the folks seeking help. And what we know from our survey data and from just anecdotal data is there's probably a lot more need, but not access or people seeking help. So yes, you may see development sooner, you may see mental health or behavioral health issues creeping up sooner. And you don't always need a formal, here's the key. You don't always need a formal diagnosis to help. which is why we're talking about an integrated system. Because when we have things like clinicians at all tiers, you're going to get to those folks sooner and you're going to connect them to the right supports faster.
Awesome. All
Just
right,
that
friends.
being said, I want you guys to also know is that the whole concept of an integrated mental health model is not to move kids through to be labeled and diagnosed either, as well, is that, you know, it's to give them the least, you know, restrictive services, but to diagnose earlier and get those coping skills. Because a lot of times the old model of PBIS was, okay, we're going to hand it off to the school counselor or the mental health counselor. And you don't always have to necessarily have somebody at that high level. And I think that's the nice beauty of PBIS and the tiered framework, is that we're looking at, you know, the premise of Project Aware, which we headed up 9 years ago, is that we look at those tier 1 interventions. And I think that's why the whole SEL piece of it is very important to teach those skills. And I know you got to move on, Brian.
Yeah, we do want to be respectful for everyone's time. And Erica's going to go through the cultural considerations or cultural responsive considerations, and then we'll wrap up with some updates. If you have to jump off at 10, totally understand. We know that we said 9 to 10, and it is going to be a little bit longer than that. So thank you, everyone, for jumping on. Erica, all yours.
I need you to share your screen.
Oh, am I not sharing? Oh, sorry about
Nope.
that. Let me do that now.
Okay, I'm going to move through this very quickly. So looking at a couple of culturally responsive practices and a couple of resources we want to make sure we get to you. This one here is from the Mental Health Technology Transfer Center Network, and it focuses on building health equity, provides resources on cultural responsiveness, racial equity, and the diversity of the mental health workforce. One of my favorite things they've got there, they've got toolkits for racial and cultural trauma. The next one, this is where we'll see a little bit of this represented in the TFI 2.1. So if you look at what's in red, we see that piece when it has to do with screening, disaggregating screening data by race, ethnicity, gender, language, to ensure that the screening process is equitable and does not disproportionately identify certain groups of students. And then also ensuring that our screening tools have been evaluated for cultural and linguistic appropriateness. And if you look at the next slide, we also have items 3.6, 3.9. It provides some guidance on culturally responsive practices concerning your outside agencies, and then also the use of mental health assessment data. And if you look at the next slide, we're not there yet, but the 3.0, TFI 3.0 is coming down the pike. So we just kind of wanted to put this on your radar, draw this to your attention, some things that you might want to think about as you're looking at your teaming structures for the future. A couple of things that you're going to see that they're going to be looking for in your teaming structure in the future. If you look at a couple things, individuals who provide expertise in those areas, but notice mental health and trauma is on that list. Equity is on that list. Someone who has knows about the data systems and information regarding SEB strengths. And if you look at the top, it talks about members from marginalized groups, relevant community partners. So these are some things we want to think about looking forward. That's a part of the TFI 3.0. It has not been rolled out yet. It is still being validated. But once it is rolled out, I'm sure more guidance will come. But we want to have that on your radar because that is integrally a part of what's coming down the pike. And then, of course, the resources that we refer to every month, the responsiveness field guide there. The next one, also the culturally responsive tiered fidelity inventory. And now Brian's going to quickly get us into the regional updates, and I'll round us out with the state updates.
Awesome. Thank you. So as you all know, the PBIS recognition timeline, the last time we spoke was the next piece was going to be districts applying for recognition. And I believe that those districts that have applied have been recognized by this time frame. So also in our regional piece, we have our PDs that are coming up. So something to think about. The coaching network, these are the months and these are the dates on this slide. It's interactive. So if you do click on the actual December 14th, 2023, it will get you to the registration piece. And then you can fill that out and you'll be ready to rock and roll talking about data-based decision-making next month. Also, for the rest of the school year, we have them slotted for those topics as we move forward. Again, we have some PBIS aspects in regards to professional development. Jillian Alley, she's on the call now. She's our guru of early childhood PBIS. So she has a few things coming up in December, 2-part series that if you're working with that age group, that would be something to recognize. Also, if you're with a district and maybe your PBIS team is being developed, we have a cohort 2 starting what we're saying in the spring from January to March. That's not spring for us, the late winter, to talk about building those new teams at your districts. Also, we talked about tier 2 systems. We have that cycle going through again. So we're talking about not only the systems, but the actual interventions that go along with that. If you were able to attend the last one regarding readiness, that was on Tuesday. A lot of you probably already signed up for the fall December 7th intervention one. If you didn't sign up, you can still attend. But the idea is that we're going to give you what you need for those tier 2 modules. And then lastly, we have some additional professional development opportunities looking at culturally responsive engagement for families, and then also other aspects of mental health. And those are on the screen coming in 2024. Then we also have our PBIS regional warehouse that you all are aware about, that we share every week, or excuse me, every month. And then I'm kicking it back to Erica.
Okay, so let's round it out with our state PBIS updates. So obviously, you know that coming up January 31st, it is the OLAC PBIS showcase. It will be virtual again. So I think that, I can't remember if that's hyperlinked or not, but make sure you register for that for sure. A few resources we want to get to you. This one here, medical diagnosis versus educational eligibility tip sheet. That is hyperlinked. It'll take you right to that resource. The next one, we're always looking for grant money, aren't we? So this is a grant. I'm not sure if everyone's aware of it. It's called the Choose Kindness Grant from the Choose Kindness Foundation. You can get a grant for up to $2,000 for PBIS schools. They support systematic instruction, recognition of kind behaviors in all areas of the school community. So the flyer is hyperlinked to the website that can take you to more information about that grant. Also wanted to make sure we get this to you. That picture there is also hyperlinked to 2023 Ohio School Guide, School Index, of course, but then it also gives you information for county agencies, regional education agencies, and then state department education offices. And then 2 more resources concerning attendance. We talked a little bit about attendance last month, but you've got a PD opportunity that's here at the ESC of Northeast Ohio on December 12th. So the registration is hyperlinked to that one. And then also resources from the Ohio Attendance Task Force. As always, we've got the website there, Ohio's free online PBIS professional development. So obviously we have our in-person ones at the ESC, but you also have these. It's got different modules for use by PBIS leadership teams to strengthen a focus area, or it could be used for learning for all staff. So thank you so much for joining us today. We know we went a little bit over time, but we had some really, really rich, wonderful conversations. We invite you to join us back next month go back one slide for me real quick, for December 14th. That the link is registered, the registration link is hyperlinked there. So it'll be all about data-based decision making. And then finally, our final slide. Thank you. Please give us feedback. We always take a look at it. We're looking to make sure that this hour with us is meaningful for you. And you can also let us know needs of things you'd like us to kind of cover in future sessions. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here with us today.
Thanks, everyone. Special thank you to Mary, Megan, Amanda, and Christina for helping facilitate those conversations. And we hope to see you guys next month.
See you next month.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.